It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical, Mainz and Dutch. I'm your host, Mainz, my colleague in the danger zone in Rainford, a man who's having an even worse fantasy season than me. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
It's mind-boggling how I'm managing to find ways to lose these games. I am the 2015 San Diego Chargers.
It's unbelievable because I played Neil this week and won, and I got 104 points. I think you got 102, but in the overarching thing of we're 7 weeks in, Neil has lost 6 times, but has scored 140 more points than me. Overall, that's it's really special work to lose in these ways, as you said, finding new ways to lose week on week.
I mean, it's not just in our league, it does extend to another league. I was going into Monday Night Football, I was 25 points behind, or something like that. No, sorry, it wasn't even that many. It was about 18 points behind, and I had Andy Dalton and CJ Uzama. So I'm thinking, Leo, I've walked this. No, I lost by 2 points. Because Andy Dalton remembered it was prime time, remembered he was on the road, and absolutely crapped the bed.
His performance on Sunday night is next level special.
I've gone back and watched it. It was utterly dreadful, and as it's a team game, we win together, we lose together. No, you lost, and you took everyone with you, Red.
You dragged everyone down with you. Well, yeah. It's week 8. We're midway point through fantasy seasons across the world.
Thank God.
I know. Yeah. Hopefully ours will be over soon. This week, standard fare. We're going to plug into the Mainz, give you a couple of stories from last week. We then got your fantasy darling and loser, which you are actually good at considering your teams are garbage. And then we'll do our DFS teams of the week.
Blind squirrels and nut, I think is the phrase I'm looking for.
I believe so. Let's start, Neil, and let's plug into the Mainz with our first story. I'm going to give you the 2017 draft. The 4th pick was a guy called Leonard Fournette, running back, LSU. The 10th pick, a guy called Patrick Mahomes. You may have heard of him. The 12th pick, Deshaun Watson. And I guess what we're trying to say is, we can slag other teams off other than the Giants for picking a high running back when they thought they were okay at quarterback.
The Giants, as evinced by moves they're starting to make, I think either they sold Dave Gettleman on a false bill of goods to take on the job, or he's actually deluded and thought that this roster was competitive. The roster is an abomination. And as much as you can blame the previous GMs, and they will, Dave Gettleman still came in and paid Nate Solder an absolute boatload of money. Dave Gettleman still made the decision, we're okay with Eli Manning. And Dave Gettleman traded for Alec Ogletree, who's an absolute, is essentially a traffic cone at middle linebacker.
But let's be honest, I don't want to slag the Giants off because we do that every week. I want to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I've decided multiple times that Blake Bortles is the answer. Decided that what they'll do is, run the ball a load like it's, 1993. Then that running back gets injured constantly. Oh, by the way, he was injured a lot at LSU as well. And Blake Bortles goes from bang average to absolutely terrible to bench for Cody Kessler.
Now, as we know, the best job in the world is backup quarterback.
Backup quarterback, absolutely.
Sadly, though, because it's the best job in the world, it's a very competitive industry, and only a certain number of people get to do it for a long period of time and get to do it well.
Looking at you, Chase Daniel.
Yeah, looking at you, Chase Daniel. Yeah, we're looking at what you should have been, Sam Bradford.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you're one of those teams that doesn't have an adequate backup quarterback and your actual starting quarterback is crap, you're in trouble. Now, they decided that they could hide Blake Bortles last season, as evinced by how often they ran the ball. Have you seen how often they're throwing the ball this season?
More than they should be.
It's ridiculous that how they've gone completely the inverse. Now, granted, their defense was never going to be as historically good as last year because that type of thing doesn't tend to translate across seasons. So Jalen Ramsey's been injured, so the defense hasn't been shut down. Their running game has not been as effective because they haven't been able to run the ball, and they've put the ball in Blake Bortles' hands. Blake Bortles is not up to it, and basically the damage that he is now doing. Yes, it's his fault because he's thrown the ball, but it's the fault of the staff, the front office, the coaching staff, and the front office for not taking steps to push Blake Bortles. Now, Shakespeare. Now, going on, this is deep, but it is linked in. He used the phrase, praise your friends in public, reproach them in private. That's a great idea. You can't do it with your quarterback in the NFL. If he's not the answer, you can't hope to trick him into playing like he's the answer.
Yeah, I think it's tough. And let's move quickly on, Dutton, and put it into a highly related story. London, are you ready? The 3-4 Philadelphia Eagles against the 3-4 Jacksonville Jaguars, with Blake Bortles still at quarterback and possibly 4 lads who were on the roster for the Super Bowl for the Eagles still playing and not on injured reserve. You looking forward to the game, Neil?
Seeing the Eagles live will be the culmination of a dream I've obviously had since since the year 2000. However, the game itself, literally, I probably could have had more fun vomiting into a paper bag and then putting said bag over my head. The Eagles, don't get me wrong, if you listen to Fran Duffy and Greg Cosell, the Eagles' defence, after they went 17-0 up, did nothing different than they had been doing. The problem is, when your offence doesn't score 25 points, you can't afford your defence to be anything less than perfect, and the defence was not perfect.
I think this is the issue. I mean, we could talk about the fact that you went from almost a 50-50 run pass to a 95-5 pass run when you went 17-0 up. Literally the opposite of what you're supposed to do in the manual. But I think you've hit the nail on the head here, and I think this is what I would describe as a NFC East issue. The NFC East as a whole believes you only need to score 24 points to win a game, and then are surprised when they lose to NFC South teams who understand that you have to score 35. They're like, well, that's weird. Why have they scored? What, we battered them for 3 quarters, yeah, but that team is designed to score 35 points. So if you don't stop them all the time, they will score 21 points in a quarter. That's quite easy for them. So these teams need to understand that they need to score more points. And as you said, if you look at it I hate the phrase, in today's NFL, but in today's NFL, the defense allowed like 21 points. What's wrong with that? That's good. That's good. Do you know what I mean? Like the Chiefs are consistently giving up more than that every single week. I think this week was the first week where they hadn't conceded more than 21 points. But you know what? You only scored 17. It's an offensive issue. Offense is the ones who need to dictate now, not defense.
The sad thing is, now I am prepared to accept that this season is not going to end in a Super Bowl for the Eagles. Because what have the Eagles done over the last 20 years to justify any arrogance on my part that they're going to get there? However, the only thing I can cling to is the Patriots didn't make the playoffs the first season after they won the Super Bowl in 2002. Yeah. This roster, annoyingly, when you talk about, revenge game, and I don't think it was a revenge game because he's still highly thought of by the Eagles organisation and the fans for what he did. Torrey Smith showed the Eagles offense what they are missing this season, and that is a vertical element. There is no downfield element in this Eagles offense. Carson Wentz is playing very well. He's completing lots of passes to lots of different, to his receivers. Zach Ertz is on a record-breaking tear for what a tight end is doing reception-wise. Alshon Jeffrey is the wide receiver 7 in fantasy football since he came back. But those two are possession receivers across the middle of the field. No one is going downfield. There's no Torrey Smith. There's no Mike Wallace, which is obviously they hoped he would be that option. There's no Matt Hollins. This defense, the offense, they are having to play 12 personnel. That's 1 running back, 2 tight ends. virtually every possession because their best pass catchers happen to be Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. But unfortunately, there's no downfield element, so this defense, there's no big plays coming unless you put the ball in someone's hands. But who's doing that? So I think this season it's a discovering season. And I think there's going to be a few veterans who won't be on this Eagles team next year in the hopes that they can get better and younger at the key positions, especially wide receiver. Now, there is, if you read reports correctly, there is a certain speedy wide receiver who may be available for trade. He is familiar with the Eagles and the NFC East because he played for another NFC East team before going to Tampa Bay. I don't think he'd help in the long term, and I don't think the Eagles are going to be trading for anyone who can't help them beyond this season. That's why I think, regardless of what the result is on Sunday, I think the Eagles are going to say, look, we'll take our lumps with what we've got this year, but we need to make changes this off-season.
I think, again, Neil, we talk NFC East as a whole, and it's like, oh, look, none of them seem to have a deep threat. Oh, look, none of them can score over 24 points in a game. Oh, isn't that a coincidence? Oh, isn't that weird?
You could argue, Odell Beckham, then a big gap, Alshon Jeffrey, then another big gap, and that's the wide receivers in the NFC East.
Oh no, absolutely, and I like Alshon Jeffrey and I like Odell Beckham Jr. But the problem you've got is that at the moment the way their offenses are set up, they never catch the ball further than 15 yards from the line of scrimmage. Do you know what I mean? So that's going to be a concern for everyone involved.
But at least 3 teams in the division didn't send a first round pick to someone who hasn't turned up for 2 years.
And is rotting on my fancy bench. Final plugged into the mains before we get into the fancy side of things, Neil. And we've discussed briefly in the past about abolishing kickers, and we literally had the reason why kickers should be abolished this week, as Justin Tucker, the metronome, missed an extra point. If that doesn't mean that kicking should be abolished, I don't know what should.
What are your thoughts on the Giants going for 2?
It's weird, right? So, and statistically, and sabermetrically, quote unquote, it's actually logical, and it actually gives them a 91% chance of winning, better chance of winning. In my opinion, I would be tempted. This is because I'm, weird. That I would probably go for 2 every single time. Like the Steelers did that last season for a while.
Yeah.
I might just do that. So then it stops being like this. Oh, they did it in this one. No. They do it all the time. That's just what they do. Do you know what I mean? So
one of my former colleagues, I don't think he writes or wrote of as much anymore, Kevin Cole, did a study a few years ago, and this has been widely tweeted about, and that if you're down by 15 points, and you score a touchdown, you go for 2 then. Because then that way, if you score again, you know what you have to do. So if you go for 2 first and make it, the pressure's off you somewhat because you know an extra point next time round is the winner. But if you leave it to, well, we need 2 points this second time, well, you've got no time left. And ultimately, it comes down to this. Are you playing to win or are you playing to go to overtime? Because if you're playing to go to overtime, you're playing to lose.
Exactly, and I think it's similar situation to the Tennessee, where they score, then they don't kick an extra point to take it to overtime and decide to go for a win. Not really got an issue with that. That's what you've decided to do. You trust your offense. You've been running the ball really well, either with Mariota or with Dion Lewis. The issue I've got is the play call. Why are you throwing it there? Just do what you've done for all the other ones, and run the ball, some kind of read option with Mariota and Dion Lewis, who had, to be fair, and done any of the movement of the ball in Tennessee had come through them too.
Yeah, it's as I say, the strategy was sound, but the tactics were faulty.
Yeah.
And
I'd personally probably kick it and go to overtime. But I understand I understand why Vrabel didn't. Once you've done that, I don't agree with what you did.
I mean, I can see the logic, because again, you've got to look. The Chargers their offensive players were a lot fresher than the defensive players, and we saw that Phil Rivers and Tyrell Williams or Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, they can score a 50-yard touchdown like that. So he must have looked at the situation. He must have asked Dean Pease, the defensive coordinator, can our boys last another 10 minutes? Because if they can't, we may as well go home. We may as well get this done and go home now.
I think like the weird elephant in the room in that game is that like it was really tight because the Tennessee kept the ball loads. They couldn't stop San Diego. Every time San Diego got the ball, he scored. They only had the ball for 10 minutes in the whole game or something outrageous. Do you know what I mean? Every time they got the ball, he scored.
Do you know, it was weird. It reminded me. Sorry, it reminded me of a game in 2013 where the Eagles kept scoring quickly, and the opposition just held the ball, and scored on long drives. Again, the Eagles got the ball back and scored quickly.
Yeah.
And the game finished about 3 points, a 3-point victory. And the ironic thing of that, of course, is that the team they were playing who did that to them was the Chargers.
The Chargers, yeah. But without Gordon, they were always going to not run. They were always going to throw a lot. And, it was Tyrell Williams' time to shine. So
I love Tyrell.
I'm made up that I'm still okay on the Chargers. Still okay on those Chargers picks at the start of the season. Anthony Lynn isn't winning Coach of the Year. I'm okay with that. That was wrong. He's not very good, but they are tremendously talented, and yeah, they're fun to watch.
Absolutely.
It's a shame no one actually cares in Los Angeles anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the thing. They were the away team on Sunday. So, but technically they're already having 15 road games on the season anyway. So,
the elephant in the room is that was an away game, and it's the most Chargers fans there will be in a game. So,
but they used to play in a soccer stadium, so
they are. That's it for the plugged into the mains. Let's go. Let's focus on fancy. So we look each week at a good and a bad in the fancy to choose from. This week, let's start with our good and give you his fancy darling.
Hello, darling.
My fancy darling is the overall wide receiver 3, and his name is Emmanuel Sanders. Yes, he is the number 3 scoring wide receiver in fantasy football this season. They are playing. He plays for the Broncos. You may have heard.
Right now, he plays for the Broncos. He's been rumoured in trade talks.
And he'd be the easier one to trade because his contract isn't exorbitant.
Yeah.
Especially if you trade for Demaryius Thomas, you're taking an 8-game rental on a player you're going to cut because his salary's $14 million next year. The Chiefs are playing. The Broncos are playing the Chiefs. Chiefs have allowed more than 30 fantasy points per game to wide receivers in each of their last 3 games. I say Sanders is the wide receiver 3 overall. He's got back-to-back games with at least 6 receptions, 100 yards and a touchdown, and he's had at least 5 receptions in all but 1 game this season. And of course, Case Keenum now is safe and will not be getting benched for any backup quarterback in the near future.
If you're unsure what we're talking about, just Google Chad Kelly. For every good, there's a bad, yin and yang, Neil. So let's talk about who this week's fantasy loser is.
Well, this loser, it's a culmination as he's been losing for the last 2 weeks. That's Mr. Alvin Kamara. He's only averaging 2 fewer rushing attempts per game with Mark Ingram as without. So it's 11.5 to 13.7. But his targets have dropped from over 11 to 3 in the last 2 games. The Saints are playing the Vikings. The Vikings have only allowed 1 running back rushing touchdown this season, but have yet to allow more than 90 rushing yards per game. And they've allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs this season. Now, I'm not saying automatically it means Mark Ingram is going to have a big day. I think it makes it more likely that Drew Brees is going to have to look elsewhere.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about this in our group chat about, like, right now, you probably take Kareem Hunt over Alvin Kamara, where you wouldn't have done that before. We talked about Ingram coming back and what impact it would have fantasy-wise. Like, we thought it would be good for the Saints, you know, real football-wise, but fantasy-wise, it could be an issue for Kamara owners. So, and at the moment, it's proven to be true because he's gone from, like, you know, running back 3 or whatever to, like, outside the top 10.
I mean, I'm not going to say that Alvin Kamara is not going to be a fantasy force for the rest of the season. I just think at the moment, the Saints on offense are in a little bit of, you know, the caught between, they don't know whether to stick or twist.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, maybe you just look, especially this week, and you're like, oh, well, they played Baltimore and he won. And that's a tough matchup for anyone running the ball. So, you know, it's one of them. Is it something you need to focus on? We'll find out going further forward. I'm sure Kamara will get a lot more touches against NFC South defenses.
Yep.
Let's move to DFS, Neil. As per usual, you and myself go into DraftKings and pick our DFS team of the week. I usually use mine to lose money. Only sometimes do when you know you're guaranteed to lose money. So let's give you our thoughts on our DFS fantasy teams of the week.
Mainz and Duttons. Daily Fantasy Team of the Week.
Show me the money.
Neil, who's your quarterback this week?
My quarterback is famous Jameis Winston. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are at Cincinnati Bengals. Jameis Winston is 6,000 on the DraftKings. Winston has passed for 360 plus yards in his last 4 starts going back to last season. He has averaged 25.4 fantasy points per game in his last 2 weeks. He's also started running, which, to be honest, the points he's getting from on the ground are making up for the turnovers that he just loves committing. The Bengals have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season and have allowed back-to-back 350-yard passing games.
Do you want to know something weird about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense?
It's actually very good.
Yeah, it's got more yards right now than the greatest show on turf did at this point in the season. Which I know weirdly makes Peyton Barber and Marshall Faulk, but we'll gloss over that. But yeah, if you're unsure how bad the Tampa Bay Bucks defense is, the Bucks offense is not necessarily breaking records, but up there with one of the greatest offenses in NFL history.
And it's going to get the coach fired.
And you're absolutely going to get the coach fired. He's an offensive guy, but hire better defensive coaches then. My quarterback, week 4 had 39.66 points. Week 5, 27.6. Week 6, 28.7. And last week, 22.7. He's everybody's favourite Civil War captain. He's Andrew Luck. He is 6,300, and he's playing the absolutely terrible Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, Luck has thrown for 3 or more touchdowns in his last 4 games. It's the longest current such streak in the NFL, and it's tied for the 2nd longest streak since 2010. The Raiders have allowed multiple touchdown passes, I think, in their last 4 games. And also, Luck only attempted 23 passes last week. That's his lowest of the season. He only completed 17 of them for 158 yards, but he did have 4 touchdowns. He's the first quarterback since 1994 to have less than 160 passing yards but 4 touchdowns in a game. Can you name the last quarterback, sir?
No chance.
Steve Young.
Well, yes, makes sense, I guess. Yeah, I think. Do you remember that time when we were really concerned by Andrew Luck's arm? That was cool.
That was
2
nice.
weeks ago, wasn't it? That was 3 weeks ago. Like, now no one's asked because it's not an issue anymore.
Yep.
We should run him back 1, Neil.
It's Andrew Luck's mate, Marlon Mack. He look good last week? Say 31.9 PPR points, doubled it was more than his previous 2 career best PPR games. He is 5,400. The Indianapolis Colts, as I say, are playing the Oakland Raiders. Mack, in his last 2 games, has had a 53.3% opportunity share, 13.7 carries. He has 4 red zone touches per game. And the Raiders have allowed 100 plus running back rushing yards in 4 of their 6 games this season.
I've got Marlon Mack as well. As Neil said, he was great last week, but he also got 89 yards the week before. So 5,400. He's actually my running back too, but as Neil's mentioned, I'll also pick him here. Who's your running back 2, Neil?
Running back 2 is someone who played against the Raiders last week, or the last time they played. It's Chris Carson. He had back-to-back 100-yard rushing games before that laugher at Wembley. He's 4,300. They're playing the Detroit Lions. The Lions have allowed at least 87 rushing yards in every game and over 170 in 3 of their 6 games this season. They've allowed the 6th most fantasy points to running backs this season. They have taken steps towards addressing their run defence today. They traded for Snacks Harrison, but I don't know how much he's going to play or how much of an impact he's going to make. And we know that Seattle are going to want to run the ball. So I think Chris Carson, 4,300. I don't really think you can argue with it.
No. My running back 1, although we've already discussed 1, is James White, New England Patriots. He's 7,200. He's playing the Buffalo Bills. Breaking news: the Buffalo Bills stink. James White, however, doesn't. He's really good. We like him a lot.
People's champion.
He is the people's champion, and we give him 7,200.
Yeah. I mean, he has already surpassed his career high in rushing attempts and yards for a season. And we're only in week 8. Because as we know, he's a pass catcher. But he has been the most reliable target for Brady all season. I know Josh Gordon is coming into form. We hinted at that last week. But James White's been the one person that Tom Brady has been able to rely on. So, again, don't hate that at all. We would like to think that Brady will have his full complement of weapons. But should someone be missing who missed last week, at least he's got White to lean on.
Who's your wide receiver 1, Dutton?
Adam Thielen, 8,700. The Saints' defence stinks, and Adam Thielen is ridiculously good at football. I really don't think we have to say anything else.
I think the only thing we'll say is this week, if Adam Thielen breaks 100 yards, he matches Megatron's record of most consecutive 100-yard games to start the season.
Yeah, and don't forget, Adam Thielen was an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, in case you were wondering if sometimes drafts don't make sense, there's one that doesn't make sense, right? My wide receiver 1 is aforementioned Josh Gordon, 6,100. Do you know he played 95% of all the snaps last week against the Chicago Bears? When I say all the snaps, all the offensive snaps. Obviously, he wasn't playing corner. I expect that to continue. That's good news. It's one of them annoying things that make Browns people probably want to boil their own heads. But there we go. Against a really shoddy Buffalo Bills pass defense, I expect Josh to get 100 yards and a score.
He did look really good. And as I say, the Cowboys spent a first-round pick on Amari Cooper, and the Patriots spent a fifth-round pick on Josh Gordon.
I think look, Josh Gordon's been, and I'm not a Cowboys defender in any way, but I think that there's a bit of context that everybody seems to have missed, is that while Amari Cooper hasn't been very good, Josh Gordon's been suspended for multiple violations of the league's substance abuse policy, of which he's openly admitted to and tried to fight against, and that's good. And we're not. But what I'm saying is, it's not like he's been reliable.
No.
So there's a reason he was a fifth-round draft pick, because
could you imagine a more toxic environment for Josh Gordon to be in than Dallas?
Well, no, exactly right, and I don't expect. By the way, I don't expect Amari Cooper to do much in Dallas. He probably will once Thanksgiving against Washington, but apart from that, he'll probably be rubbish. Who's your wide receiver 2, Neil?
Emmanuel Sanders, 6,500 for previously mentioned reasons.
Good call, Neil. Good call. My wide receiver 2 is Taylor Gabriel. Not a great week last week against the New England Patriots, but I expect him to bounce back versus a pretty terrible Jets pass defense.
Yeah, the Jets have positively welcomed wide receiver production. I do think the slight elephant in the room is that we do need to point out that even though he did go over 300 passing yards eventually, Mitchell Trubisky looked absolutely awful for large parts of that game.
That is absolutely one of those games where the box score does not pay full credit to actually what happened during that game. It doesn't bear any recollection to it, actually.
I've made the joke, but at times it was like watching a right-handed Tim Tebow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few things that you say is they still scored 31 points. So if you're Chicago Bears, you're like, Matt Nagy may be able to coach offense, and if you're the Patriots, you're like, that's a lot of points for a team that didn't throw. Like, we need to get better there. But yeah, absolutely right. I expect Taylor Gabriel. I expect Trubisky to be better. No, nowhere near spectacular. And I also expect Taylor Gabriel to get the benefit of him being better.
And as I discovered today, Mitchell Trubisky has the longest current streak of being sacked at least once in a game. His current active streak is 18 games in which he's been sacked at least once. And just to add a bit further context, he has played 18 career games.
Consistent. I like consistency. Nearly can't argue with it. Who's your wide receiver 3?
Wide receiver 3 it's a dart throw, and it's to an extent there is some element of reverse jinxing here. It's Dante Moncrief. He's 4,400. The Jacksonville Jaguars. London's Jacksonville Jaguars are playing at Wembley Stadium against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I will be there, crying into my hands. He's seen double-digit targets in 2 of his last 3 games. He does lead the Jaguars in targets and air yards. He's likely to be going up against Ronald Darby, and Darby has allowed 50 or more yards in 5 of 6 games this season. The Eagles have allowed 50 fantasy points to wide receivers in 3 of their last 4 games and are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Now, if he goes out and absolutely craps the bed, I'll be very happy. If he goes out and tears the Eagles apart, I will be moderately satisfied.
I was going to attempt a reverse jinx, but couldn't really afford Saquon Barkley. My wide receiver 3 has been targeted a massive 54 times already this season. It's Baltimore's John Brown. He is 5,900. Neil shouted at me this week because I actually did some research on some of these team players like that. But I'm sure you got more interesting stuff on John Brown, Neil.
He's very fast.
He is very fast.
Michael Crabtree is getting an awful lot of targets, but is doing bugger all with them. Willie Snead is getting a lot of targets, but is doing bugger all with them. The Ravens owe to be a Ravens tight end and be dominant because you get so much work, and that would be the tight end one, but they can't split them up. John Brown's the one constant because, once he gets the ball in his hand, you can't catch him.
Absolutely. Who's your tight end, Neil?
My tight end, and this is an important distinction because I have 2 tight ends in my lineup, but one of them I'm putting in the flex, and there's a very strong reason why he's in my flex, which I'll get to. My tight end is my old friend David Njoku again. He is 4,600. The Browns are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. 30% of the receptions allowed by the Steelers this season have been to tight ends. They've allowed 7+ receptions and 85 yards to tight ends in 4 of their last 5 games. They've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends. Njoku has 4 straight double-digit fantasy point games, and he's got touchdowns in his last 2, and he is the tight end 5 since Baker Mayfield became the starting quarterback.
All those things Neil said are the reason that I also picked David Njoku 4,600 against a very porous Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Who's your flex, Neil?
My flex is Mr. Rob Gronkowski of the New England Patriots. You may have heard of him. He's 6,200. Now, the reason he is in my flex and not my tight end is because he's questionable for Monday night. Now, if he's questionable for Monday night, I need him to be in the flex so I can get him out and hopefully put someone else in from that game. If I put him in at tight end and then he was ruled out late, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
So it was a tactical decision. Rob Gronkowski is from Buffalo and has taken every opportunity he can to absolutely destroy his hometown team in Buffalo. So I know it's an island game, and I know Brady has been a bit iffy on the road in the AFC East when he's not playing the Jets, but the Bills are an absolute dumpster fire. So Rob Gronkowski, if he's in, hopefully he can start getting some red zone targets because he's not had them this season. But if he's back, I think it's a feed Gronk day.
My flex is Tariq Cohen of the Chicago Bears. He's playing in New York Jets, as we mentioned before. I think it's happening, Neil. He is becoming the go-to running back in that offense. Makes sense in the way that Matt Nagy plays. I think I had something. And I think he's probably their best defensive weapon at the moment. So Tariq Cohen, who is 5,800.
Speaking of which, if you or anyone you know has seen Allen Robinson, please get in touch with the Chicago Bears, care of Soldier Field, Chicago, Illinois, because he's gone missing and we miss him.
But if your quarterback's not very good at throwing the ball, a down the field option is not always the best idea.
No.
Who's your defense and special teams, Neil? If it isn't the New England Patriots, I would like a reason why.
Yeah, Derek Anderson is still a starting quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, so until further notice, they are the first name on my team sheet, and literally it was the first thing I did. I put the New England Patriots in, 3,500. Derek Anderson is not an upgrade on Nathan Peterman. So if your option until Josh Allen comes back is Derek Anderson or Nathan Peterman, I am attacking you.
So as we know, Football Outsiders do DVOA. Before last week, the Buffalo Bills were the third worst team offense in terms of DVOA ever scored by Football Outsiders, which I believe goes back to 1987.
Something like that.
However, last week against the Colts, it got worse, and now they are the worst offense ever scored by Football Outsiders for their offensive DVOA. And
their offense is offensive. Granted, we don't know if LaShawn McCoy could have made a difference because he got injured very, very early. But if that's your quarterback, you're not doing anything.
No, it's not good. Patriots are only 3,500 as well, and I think one of the others defenses is like 4,100. Absolute madness. Neil, let's reflect and go through our teams before we leave everyone. Who's your quarterback?
The man that Charles Dagnall said he would swap for Derek Carr in an instant, Mr. Jameis Winston.
I have Andrew Luck. Running back 1.
Return of the Mac. It's Marlon Mack.
I also have Marlon Mack. Who's your running back 2?
It's the way he tells them, Chris Carson.
I've got, Jesus. Tell you what, there's some classics here. I've got James White. Who's your wide receiver 1?
Hooked on a feeling.
I've got Josh Gordon, the Flash as he's known. Wide receiver 2.
Orbital Sanders.
Jesus. I've got
I'm
Taylor
keeping
Gabriel.
going.
I know. Wide receiver 3.
Dante's Inferno Moncrief.
Wow, one for the kids there. I'm completely bamboozled about where I am now. I have got John Brown. Who's your tight end?
No joke, it's Njoku.
I also have Njoku. Flex.
I'm not on drugs, by the way. Out here, I didn't make these up. I'm literally trying to make these up on the spot.
Who's your flex?
Gronk.
I've got Tariq Cohen. And who's your defense and special teams?
The Patriots missiles heading straight for Derek Anderson.
Bad times for Derek Anderson ahead. As long as moonlight and music and dance and let's face the music and dance, right?
Is English your first language?
It's not, completely and utterly chewing me tongue tonight. It's just not great. Neil?
Yeah, it's cabbaged.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Or kettled, as it's called in Liverpool nowadays, I believe.
Don't know where that's come from.
I don't know, neither do I, and I'm not really sure what it means. I've been away for 5 or 6 years, and we just kind of invented a new word that I didn't know. Neil, so I know people can catch you in London on Saturday and Sunday, but where can they catch you on the internet pre that?
On the internet, where I'm owned online. I can be found on the Twitter machine at ndutton13. Does sound like English is my first language either. My article's out this week. I had my 5 weekly stats for Numberfire. A couple of them I did regurgitate during the course of our conversation. My game level similarity projection articles for tight ends and quarterbacks is also out. My wide receiver target report from last week. I look at all the wide receivers who saw double-digit targets, break down what they did with them, how they've been doing, and what they may do going forward. And I should have another article out on Yahoo by the end of this week on players that have done well so far this season, but you need to get shot of now. It's called Finding Frauds.
I like it. And Neil's obviously at ndutton13. I am at Mainz7. Combined, we are at waxing_lyrical. If you like us, give us a follow. Tell your mates. We appreciate all comments. I know NFL Girl UK, who you probably see over the weekend, I guess, Neil.
I believe so.
Gave us a word on the Twitter, and we thank her for that.
She's a good egg.
She is indeed. That's it, Neil. It's time to go. Enjoy London. I won't be there this week as it's my son's 11th birthday, and I'll be playing Quasar. And that makes me the massive winner. And these top guys are out.